Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen. I am JM. This is a show where we just talk about gaming, things that we love, things that we like about gaming, games, game reviews, board games, books, novels, genres, the whole nine yards. If it's connected to gaming, we're going to be here talking about it. And today, we just wrapped up our look at fantasy genres, and we're going to start next week our look at the science fiction genres and how we can replicate those as GMs and players. But today I thought I would take a question from the channel, and Ben, who plays in our Torg Eternity game, this is the Ben that plays Kowalski, the techno demon with a heart of gold and a head of metal. He put forth a really good question in the Iconic Patreon Discord, which if you are not a member of, jump over to iconicproduction.com/Patreon and you can join us there as well. Ben is one of those people who ponders the deep questions that the rest of us talk about for a while. And so I really appreciate it. He's been wrestling with something and for a while just kind of pondering it, and shared it with the Discord channel this morning. And so it's sort of a two-parter, which is why I titled this episode The Ebbs and Flows of Gaming. So let's start with the deeper let's start with the shallower one and work our way deep. So the first thing was, how do you deal with the ebb and flow of what he called role playing versus action, where you have some players who want to sit around and talk and interact in character, sit around the campfire, tell stories, reminisce, really dig into each other's backstories. And you have some characters who want just to kick down the door and kill orcs. And I said there's also the component that sometimes the GM is in a mood where he has planned or she has planned a role-playing component or a combat component, and players can also flip those around. You pour your heart and soul into crafting this little incarnate piece of yourself in the world that you're running, and the players shiv them and take their money. Or the players won't leave the town, because this is an example from Mark that he uses, because they've decided that the blacksmith, who you just threw the name out, is far more interesting than the actual plot hook. And as they're trying to get more information about the blacksmith's life story, you are just spinning whatever comes out of one of your orifices to create a story, all the while going, why are you here? This person was just there to sell you a sword. Sometimes the blacksmith is just a blacksmith. So how do you handle that? Well, I think, one, you're always going to have a broad group of people who have different goals for what they want out of role-playing. Robin Laws has the Robin Laws of good game mastering, and he identifies several different archetypes of players. Some players do just want to get to the table with their optimized build and see how it works. Some players want the puzzle, the challenge of unraveling the story. Some players want to embody a character and forget the world and be the actor and have this person be real to them. Some players want to participate in a great story, so they're willing to engage in whatever the rest of the group and the GM is wanting to do. And some players are what Robin calls social gamers, those who really just enjoy hanging out with people, and if this is the activity that people have chosen to do, then gosh, I'll show up with snacks and roll dice and just let that play out. And so part of the job of a GM is to keep the plates spinning. There are times where one or two people may really want to dig in to this NPC story or have a deep interpersonal connection conversation, and there are some times where players don't. Again, there's no right or wrong way to do this, but I think we had a great moment in our Torg game several weeks ago that kind of highlights that, where Brother Block seemingly sold his soul to a demon, and our techno demon, Kowalski, wanted to tease that out, really wanted to have this deep emotional moment, and the Bens weren't on the same page. Ben Kowalski wanted to have this deep emotional moment, and Ben Block just wanted to move on to the next kind of beat of the story, and that's fine. You'll have moments in games where players aren't on the same page. They want to do different things. I think as the GM, we have tools to kind of help speed up or slow those scenes down. You know, one thing that I do, and you may see me do this in the game, is when two people are really wanting to have a moment and other people are wanting to get action done, I'll say, okay, hold on, we'll come back to you guys in a second. I want to focus the spotlight on here. And I have great players, and they'll stop and they'll let Delilah and Kit go off on a tangent, or they'll let the boys go have their brunch. It's good to realize that the spotlight doesn't always need to rest on you. And sometimes, right, we have this wonderful medium of role-playing games where we are all directors and actors in the same thing. We are both the storytellers and the audience. And so sometimes it's okay to sit back and watch someone else's story unfold. Be patient, the spotlight will come back around to you. Let's see what the chat has to say. Mark does want to talk about life in compare fashion while they kill kobolds, and Mark does a great job at this. I countered to Ben that it doesn't always have to be one or the other. In our 2E game that I'm running for him and the kids, most of the role-playing actually is coming out in the middle of combat, where the half-elf priest of Corellin, Ralph, is constantly giving up prayers, and the rest of the group is like, please stop talking about him, we're not converting, we don't care, let's move on. You'll find in simple role-playing interactions, one player wants more information, and so will blackmail NPCs into giving them more information. Power gamers do have a bad name. Padre, it is a legitimate way to play. I actually enjoy having power gamers at the table because they're system masters, and that helps me out. One of the ways that I enjoy having power gamers at the table is I can offload parts of the rules to them and allow them to dig into it and engage with it. Rules lawyers aren't a bad thing in the game. They want to play the rules as written. They want to master the game. My good friend Calvin is a system mastery guy, and I love that about him. We were playing Shadowrun. I was always able to like give him the hacking rules, ask him questions. It was great. And Calvin's not a person who will often challenge me on something, and he'll suggest. There are times where he will say, no, this is the way it has to be, and either I have to make a call, or 9 times out of 10 I trust him in the way he runs, in the way he understands the rules. When we were playing L5R, it was also wonderful to have him there. So John says, I think one of the really nice things of having a good battle map or a picture of the scene is you don't have to describe the scene, and then the players won't focus on the next 3 sections of the tapestry you randomly mentioned and should never have. Yeah, it's also why as GMs, if you notice, all of our flavor text usually ends with, and then you see the dragon. Because if you start with the dragon, no one's going to listen to your beautiful prose. They're going to focus on the fact that there's a dragon in the room. So, Phantom is listing the episodes from, I think from Fading Suns that we had. And yes, there are time for downtime. I worry about that, not so much in my home games, the games that I don't stream. If we have a whole episode, or I hate that term, it's gotten in my head. If we have a whole session where my players just want to go shopping, where they want to hit the Agora in the Jackals game, when they want to have a discussion with the mayor or the owl witch that they found in the forest, I'm fine. I will let them just guide that. And if I need to, and we'll come back to bangs. Not bangs, obviously I don't have any of those kind of bangs. I'm fine with it. But on stream, I struggle with how much of that do people actually want to see and engage with. And usually my players are okay, where if they get in a analysis paralysis or another type of spiral, I can usually shake them out of that. It's weird that we should talk about someday the difference between running a stream game and running a home game. It's a very different style of gaming. Phantom, I had a wonderful phalanx. Well, it wasn't a phalanx. They were formation fighter ogres in 3.0 or 3.5. that the group finally decided to do something about this militant ogre army that was coming down. And they thought they would just go in and destroy them. And it was part of my power gaming days, Padre, because I discovered a couple of feats that if you stacked them, would allow all of the ogres to essentially make attacks of opportunity with halberds that they also had reach. So they had 20-foot threaten, and they had the large and in charge feat, which says if they hit you and dealt damage, you went back to your starting square and couldn't finish your movement. The group found a way around it, but it was an interesting puzzle for them to solve. So, ways to speed up and slow that down, the ebb and the flow, pay attention. If you got some people who are really agitating, separate them off. Let them go do something else. Let them get into a small fight, bounce back and forth. Scene, a couple of minutes of role-playing, a couple of minutes of combat. If you're the GM and you're like, all right, the blacksmith is clearly not the guy to talk to, use a technique from the Forge called the bang. Have something kick in the door. Have more goblins show up and attack the blacksmith, try to kidnap them. Have someone kick in the door and say there's a murder. Have the blacksmith lament the fact that, you know, their son was taken by goblins. There are ways to kind of control that ebb and flow, but again, part of the thing is, as a GM, realizing the style of players that you have and trying to cater to them. Because as the GM, you can create almost any story, but you're not writing a novel. So you have to include everyone else. And as the GM, you are both, you know, creator and audience, just like everyone else at the table is creator and audience. It's a very participatory act. And as with anything participatory, you have to know when it's your time to participate and when it's your time to observe. So there is that. Now, Ben had another part of this, which is the deeper question. How do you deal with the burnout of players? We've talked about the burnout of GMs. Player burnout, I had to tease a little bit more from Ben on what he meant by this. Those moments in the campaign where they've just lost a beloved character, where they have had this emotional beat that really just beat them down, where they've had a really bad day and they're bringing that into the game. Or when they had a big cathartic moment and they don't know what to do next. What do you do with that? Well, I think it's always appropriate if death happens in games. Death happens in my games. Most of my players can handle the fact that their character died, make a new character by the next session, and bring it in. Sometimes we've had moments where they've been very emotional deaths. There have been tears at the table. There have been struggles to find a way forward. And in those times, it's usually, I mean, it's appropriate to give people a little bit more space to breathe. Whether that's a board game night, whether that's, hey, we're going to play this other group for a little bit and come back. Whether it's just, hey, make your next character an expendable character if you need to. Just get some of that out. I think back to my Numenera game, and we had 2 major emotional beats hit basically at the same time. This is Ben and Richard. Richard of the Grand Campaign and Ben who put this forth. Ben's character, Kames, had sacrificed herself to save a universe. The group had just brought her back from the dead, but she was unable to return with them. She was bound to this new plane of existence. And Kames and Elise, Ben's and Richard's characters, were very close in game. They're best friends in real life. And Elise just discovered, you know, she was not who she thought she was. She was actually an android simulacrum of who she thought she was, had killed her father, and had left. And so they both brought these new characters. There was, well, so first Richard brought a new character, and then Ben's new character, Scales, died in just a brutal fashion. And so Ben brought the earth shall be watered with the blood of the wicked, who I think is an Ontarian from Discworld. And these 2 characters hated each other. And they were both dealing with the trauma of the emotional beats. And they dealt with that by killing each other's character and setting off a nuke that destroyed a large swath of the southern half of the continent. So maybe not the best way to handle that. But they had characters that they went into going, these are probably not the characters that we're going to keep playing, but we need an emotional break from the weight of the campaign. And that was fine. So that is a way to give some ebb to the players. Give them a downbreak. Give them an NPC to play for the session. Say, hey, your character just accomplished this thing. While they're dealing with that, the group has to deal with this. Here's this NPC. Here's a new character for you to play and go out and just enjoy something new. Give them something totally different. Do a one-shot. Do a board game night. Because it's true, players can be very deeply invested in your game, and those are the things that we love as a GM. But that can also twist in a way you did not expect. And so I think reading the table and giving them time to adjust before they move on. I'm not saying stop the game. I'm not saying bring their character back from the dead, retcon a death or an emotional moment. But give the person who is probably your friend a little bit of time to then move on and reconnect back into the campaign. Again, side quests, NPCs, a board game night, all great ways of dealing with this. A really strong drink can help as well. All right, so let's see here. I will tell you what Rook says, I will tell you what I told JM. Never give me something that would make Rook miserable. Fair. Phantom, I feel like you really just want to run Tucker's Kobolds. If you haven't read Tucker's Kobolds, just Google the phrase Tucker's Kobolds and enjoy that. That is just a boatload of PTSD waiting for any D&D group. Padre says we had a game and a player in a play-by-host game that played a martyr card and then couldn't find another character that worked. So the player brought the character back as another version from a different concept. See, that's a great way to do it in Torg, or if they're from the Nile Empire, you just wait for that inevitable return card to show back up and then you are good to go. So, hopefully that has been helpful. If you have any additional comments or any additional questions or things that you would like to see us address in behind the screens, leave them in the comments down below or join the Patreon and you can get in on the conversation. We're going to be starting our hard science fiction look next week. Actually, no, I think we may start with near sci-fi and sort of ramp up from closest to our time all the way out to space fantasy. So, check out all the other great shows that we have on the Iconic Production channel. We're going to be doing Exploring Glorantha on Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Time with Evan, where we're going to be looking at Pavis and the Big Rubble. And on Sunday, we're going to be looking at two great books in the Night's Black Agents. We switched up the schedule a little bit. I think we're going to do the Dracula dossier in October for Halloween. We're going to be reviewing Double Tap and the Director's Resource Guide on Sunday at 7 if you'd like to, or at 8 o'clock Central if you'd like to join us. Torg Eternity will return on Tuesday. Apologies for this week. Had some family things that came up that I had to take care of. And then we're going to be doing our Savage Rifts game next Friday. John will be joining us. Hopefully we're going to have JD and Chris from Peg and Tank the Frank in on that. And then finally, a week from this Saturday, we'll be having our next installment of the Grand Campaign. A little later, I'll make an announcement next Thursday to let you know when it's starting. And that will be for, we're going to look at factions, how to use factions in games, and why they're really necessary for a Grand Campaign. So, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. It is always wonderful to chat with you on Behind the Screen. Big thanks to Ben for his questions, and we'll probably do some campaign clinics scattered in the science fiction discussions. And I just got great news. Blackbirds, the game that I did the review where I had a massive headache, so I don't feel like I did the game justice, will be shipping, and I should be receiving it here soon, and I plan on doing an unboxing video of that game on stream for Behind the Screen. So, I will see you all sometime in the future. Thank you to everyone who showed up today, to Grom, to Mark, to Rook, to Phantom, to Padre, to John, and I'm sure I'm missing at least one or two more people. If I do, I am sorry. I will talk with you all later. This has been Behind the Screen, and I will see you all on Tuesday. Have a great one.